So I chose one day I don't know, you guys were just choosing topics and one of them was kind of all about demand avoidance, the what is demand avoidance, what should we be thinking about as parents. So what I think, regardless of what we think of a PDA profile, I think many kids are can be considered demand avoidant in different situation, and certainly as coping strategies are taxed or a child is feeling overwhelmed, there are demands that are inherent in everything we do. As adults, we have demands. Even if we try to make a low demands environment, our children are given demands in many different ways. What I thought might be interesting, thought provoking to think about, it's like, at least in these little 30-minute meetings, if I can give you nuggets of things to think about and ways to possibly change the way you're thinking or the way you're presenting something to your kids, then that is what helps us change a system that isn't working well, or that we're frustrated with, or that we're stagnant with. And what's really important, and we do a lot with our teachers, is thinking about demands that we don't always notice or consider. There are obvious demands like putting on your shoes or getting dressed in the morning. But what is important is those demands are necessary. You have to put your clothes on, you have to put your shoes on, you have to walk out the door. But if we can think about demands that are almost invisible demands, things that happen before we ask a child to put on their shoes, so that maybe when we ask them to put on their shoes, they don't throw their shoes across the room, that's going to help us get to the priority demand that has to happen, so that we've lowered the invisible demands, and then it makes the demands that feel big not feel so big. So some of the ways we think about here what are demands is basically, if you think about every individual child and what is taxing for them. So every child is going to be different in that way. But if you think about your own individual child and you think about the different sensory systems, those are areas that are going to be some of the invisible demands, because we're taxing a system that is already fragile. For example, if your child is noise sensitive, then noise is going to be something that is a demand for them. So if you are, let's say, out and about and you're asking a child to stay with you, is that a realistic demand when it's loud, the noise is unpredictable, and it's going to be sensitive to their ears? Let's say you're at the mall. If you want your child to stay with you at the mall, but you know that they're noise sensitive, and the unpredictable noises at the mall, the noises that are close to them, and then there's these far away environmental noises, those are all going to be invisible demands that are taxing the child's system, that's going to make it almost impossible to, quote, stay with you at the mall. Then you think about visual stimuli and how overwhelming visual information can be for a child. So when you when you are visiting, now it's natural to you, but when you visit Fuse, we look like a very sterile environment in the classrooms, because we take down a lot of the visual distractions, because those then are things that are just, those are hard for kids. So then when we ask a child to pay attention, or we ask a child in circle time to be thinking about the teacher, if there's a lot of visuals that they're looking at, one of which could be the schedule that has demands on it that are going to be overwhelming for the child, that's showing them something that may be overwhelming for them if they're thinking, oh my gosh, we have reading groups this afternoon. That's already, we're not saying it's a demand yet, but they can look at it on that piece of paper. And that's already something that is overwhelming their system. So when we think about the sensory system and we think about every individual child, that's the first step in the process of understanding what is going to be a demand and what might be a visual. I mean, what might be an invisible demand for your child is thinking about their sensory system, thinking what you've learned from your individual OT about what is hard for your child. So it would be any of the auditory noise, any of that visual noise. Tactile is going to be huge. If we have a sensory bin out and a child hates the feel of slime, that's already a demand that they think we're going to make them touch that slime. So they're already going to be out the door thinking that that is something that we're going to demand of them. So that's another area, that's an area of sensory that you want to really think about and understand within your child before you then are placing a demand on them that might, all it's doing is tipping them over when you have these underlying areas that you want to think of as demands. So the way we look at it in terms of like what is a tipping point is what is kind of within their window of tolerance and what is with outside their window of tolerance. And that is when we talk to the teachers about what is a demand and what are we creating within demands that are actual demands and invisible demands. Understanding your child's window of tolerance is incredibly important to understand what you can load on them in terms of demands. So what we're talking about within a window of tolerance is kind of where a child is in terms of regulation in that moment of the day. So a great example is, let's say, drop off. A window of tolerance is when we know they're in a good place and when we can then create expectations for that child. So if we think about drop off and we think about what we can demand of a child once they get to our school, there are 14 things we have to consider before, hypothetically 14, that we have to consider before we even open the door for that child. From home, those are all invisible demands to us, but we know to take those into consideration. What may have happened in the morning, that it may have been a tricky morning. They may have, it's a Monday. So then all of a sudden they're getting up. There's demands of getting them dressed, putting their shoes on, eating their breakfast. It's a very scheduled morning. So then we open a door and now we think as a teacher, we're putting the first demand on them. But in actuality, that may be the thing that tips them over the edge. And that may be something that they just are not ready yet to get out. So that's where we come at it as we can attune with you. We can align with the child to see when they're ready to get out. And if they need 1 more minute to finish a song, or if they need 1 minute to tell me what the weather was or what the temperature was or what highway they took, that allows us to connect and regulate with that child. So then that demand of getting out of the car and saying goodbye and having to hand over a stuffy or the iPad doesn't feel as big to them as it could have. But that if we had just placed the demand on, okay, it's time to get out, and we made that a demand in that moment, that would have felt too big for the child. And then we get that avoidance of a demand. But it's all about the considerations of those invisible demands throughout the day. So using that example of what we think about as teachers, what I want to do is think about at home, what could be the demands that we know are going to be demands for the child, but then things that we aren't thinking about that either we can work around or we think about, oh, wait, maybe asking them to put their shoes on themselves isn't in fact a priority today because we've already had four different things that are that I had to push on, like eating breakfast or making sure they put on clothes or put on pants over shorts or something like that. So it's always thinking about in a realm of that window of tolerance of when you're in a window of tolerance and it's a wider window of tolerance, we can expect more from a child. The more demands and the more sensory systems that are being taxed, the smaller that window of tolerance is, and the less a child is going to be able to tolerate. So let's take a Monday morning, for example. A child wakes up and we're you think it's going to be a great day, and that's our hope and dream for every day, but they're waking up a little bit groggy. Maybe they didn't have the best night of sleep, so you're already thinking, okay, you're judging that window of tolerance. It's like what our teachers do every day all the time is judging where are we within that window of tolerance. If a child wakes up happy, really feeling regulated, you know that window of tolerance is wide, and you can put on those expectations of, okay, so here's your clothes. You can put out the kind of a list of things that you want them to do in that morning. If a child is already groggy when they wake up, that window of tolerance is smaller. So you may sit with them for a little while before you place a demand on them. You may sit and just kind of talk about nothing, just sit with them, or do something that is more of their interest, like singing a song or thinking about, like, oh, I'm thinking we have clothes and we have breakfast. What are you thinking we should do first? So that then they're getting some of that autonomy within that moment. And what it's helping is as they feel more in control, then they're feeling more successful, then they're building their confidence. And then that window of tolerance increases a little bit, widens a little bit. So then, okay, so we'll do breakfast first and then we'll do clothes. So then they know, okay, breakfast, then we can work on clothes. And that's, they're going to feel more of that autonomy from getting to choose breakfast. So then maybe clothes isn't going to be the thing that they're going to press the most because they feel like they got some options and some choices in that beginning. As you move through a morning and you move through all the different demands, there are demands that are natural in the way that we have to move through the morning, but a sibling coming in, being loud, unpredictable, a sibling crying, those are going to be the things that just vacillate that window of what they can tolerate. If all of a sudden they're at breakfast, we think we're nailing it, and then a sibling cries, we've just lessened that window of tolerance. So now we have to think about, like, oh, that was feeling loud, really validating that felt loud. So then we need to think about what we can do to kind of get them in a place where then the next demand is easier, has an easier land. And you're validating that, oh yeah, sibling is feeling loud. Do you want some headphones while you finish eating? Because in those moments, you're always kind of trying to think about what is working and what is taxing to their system, and from a holistic system standpoint. Or what also happens for lots of our kids is they know the schedule. You start talking about the schedule. This happens here for kids that have a hard time going to OT or speech. They come in, this happened one day last week, a child came in and was already thinking about, it was brand new to OT. So already thinking about OT. And as not a teacher, I did not know that yet. And I walked into the classroom and I was like, wait a minute, why isn't my friend joining the activity? And the teacher, which normally on a typical day that would have been within the expectations of that child to join that activity. But they were kind of on the periphery and watching. And I was like, wait a minute, why isn't my friend joining? And the teacher was like, oh, today is his first day with Bell, whoever, OT. And we're giving him a little space. And sure enough, that morning for about an hour, everything was a no. No to this, no to that, didn't want to have snack, because in their brain, something new was about to happen. And that just slimmed down their window of tolerance of everything else that's happening to a bare minimum. So had we said, hey, friend, come join circle time or come join the art project, what would have happened? They would have communicated to us that they were well outside their window of tolerance, and they would have been disruptive or dysregulating, or communicated in a way of taking, like, and another time taking their picture off the wall, throwing their picture. And then that would have turned into a moment that we would have to redirect the behavior. But if we start watching for these demands that we may think are part of a schedule, but are really taxing to a child and minimizing what they can tolerate elsewhere, then it starts to prioritize, okay, what else can we do that's going to help the child widen that window of tolerance, or just be in the moment until that big moment happens that is all they can think about at that time. So at that time, I took the friend to the movement room and we just crashed in the beanbags. And the OT then came to the movement room to transition the child, and he was able to transition because we had done a ton of crashing. We were being really silly. I kept talking about how, oh my gosh, Belle is going to think this is so great. And when Belle came, he showed her this fun thing he was doing. Belle saw it, and then they were able to transition. Had we had him in the classroom, expecting the art activity, expecting the circle time, Belle would have then been so far outside what he could tolerate. He would have seen her face in the door because he knows who she is, and he would have said absolutely no. And the transition then would have been what he remembered about OT being a very negative experience. So by understanding that window of tolerance and what felt like new demands that on a different day would have not been a demand, and understanding that what was the demand was something over here and not these things, but eliminating those demands on that moment allowed that bigger demand that he was actually anxious about to be positive. So then the next time Belle comes, he's going to be able to do the regular schedule because it's now natural to him. He had a positive experience with Belle. So kind of all that being said, that is kind of the way we think at Fuse of how to understand a demand and how to understand what we can do to lessen demands and what we can do to alleviate stress that decreases that window of tolerance from demands that may not even feel like demands for us, but are pretty big demands for our kids, given multiple different factors in their profile of what they're doing. So what I thought might be helpful is kind of to just, if you guys want to share a scenario, because any scenario you guys have, other people have, if you want to share a scenario of something that felt very unexpected as a demand, and then we can back it up to understand what the precursors were or why that felt like a demand, or just a demand that happens within the day that feels big and something you can't get around, is something we're working with every day here, of things that we work around demands so that they feel successful. For example, walking in the hallway, huge demand for our kids, not because they physically can't do it, but because of all the invisible demands that go with that walking in the hallway. Similar to going out in a mall, it's the other kids coming at them unpredictably. It's the noise. It's the, now I have to walk with 5 other kids and I have to regulate my body. I have to co-regulate with the other kids. and maybe visually, spatially, being in a small hallway with lots of turns is really hard for their motor planning. So as you see, or you can appreciate now, from at the beginning of the year, teachers are incredibly creative of how we move down the hallway, and we are moving in small groups. We are moving on scooter boards. We are moving, holding on to something. It is only maybe now that we get to a place where an entire group, maybe now, is moving together as a group. At the beginning of the year, we're lessening the demands so that we're increasing their success and increasing their tolerance for the hall before we increase their tolerance for moving together as a group. So it's always thinking about the like invisible or behind the scenes demands that make that one big demand so impossible that if we had started the school year with all the kids walking in the hall together as a group, it would have been one, disastrous. They would have felt very unsuccessful with it. And then we have to behaviorally redirect them when one runs this way, one runs that way. Then it turns into teachers coming in and we're having to work on that as a quote behavior rather than work on it as a learning, as something they have to evolve and learn over time and appreciate all the iterations of just moving from point A to point B in the hallway. So I don't know if what someone wants to throw out something that they're struggling with that would potentially apply to other families as well.
I can provide a starting point if that's helpful. And also a couple, yeah. Well, first, for us, one is like Cooper takes medicine in the morning and at night, and Brendan, I forget, he's off camera, but it's in a syringe, and like we put in a yummy tasting medicine in there with it, or a yummy tasting like omega supplement, and 9 out of 10 times Brendan hands it to Coop, like literally brings it to his mouth to inject it. And, meh! And he like moves his head or reverts and runs away. I don't need it. I'm not taking it today. I don't need my medicine.
And he knows it's a demand. He knows it's something he has to do. So in that situation, he knows it's every day. He knows it's coming. That very much plays into the autonomy aspect of helping him feel like he has some control over it. And Brianna's on, so Brianna, jump in if you have other ideas. One thought, when we think of demands, it's all about how our kids want to have some control and want some autonomy. And people may say, well, you know, that's not the way we should think with a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old. It is because that is how our kids, there's so many stressors in their world, and everyone kind of is, if you think about Cooper, and again, you can't take these away, it's the morning. So there's already inherent demands of getting dressed, getting his shoes on. He knows he has to go to school. So those are demands. And now he has this learned behavior around a demand with the medication. So you almost have to flip it and think about, so if it's in a syringe, here are some ways you can create an autonomy around that, is buy different color syringes and be like, oh my gosh, Cooper, will you set up what days you want, which one, if he knows the medicine is coming in the syringe, buy different color syringes, and he gets to control which syringe dad uses to put the medicine in. And he gets to control, fine if he has to have the omega gummy, but he gets to control what he gets after to take down the taste of, do you want today, it's going to change every day because he wants control over it. So if it's chocolate milk today, it's the gummy tomorrow. Like maybe if he needs the gummy, then that's also a control. So you got to take that out of it as well. But if he can wash it down with applesauce, yogurt, or chocolate milk, let him control 2 aspects of it. So the only part that you're going to have to control is the medicine getting in the mouth. And what is incredibly helpful about medicine with a syringe, if you teach him to do it and you teach it with water, it takes the physical control over Brendan doing it. So it will help him feel a lot more autonomous if you work on him doing this. I don't know, does he do it on his own? The syringe part?
He can. It's I think from I'm just gonna blame Brendan. From Brendan's perspective, it
Easy
like
when he's off the screen, right?
I know it's like he I think it's trying to lessen the demands, like lessen like the it's like literally just open your mouth and swallow. But if we flip it, that would give him control. I guess I would
Yes.
worry about
So
him like throwing it or
he only
something.
gets a one chance to, like, if he
Mm.
doesn't if he takes the medicine and flings it, then, oh man, I thought you were ready for you to do the medicine, but that's okay. I can keep doing it until you're ready. But
Mm.
I would let him have a little bit of control over it and let him kind of choose like some of the aspects of it. And you can be like, I noticed the medicine. You could talk about it with him. I noticed the medicine is really hard for you. Do you think it would be easier? Because especially for him, Cooper, and many of our kids, they can have a lot of thought processes about this. Do you think it would be easier for you if you took it after breakfast or
Mm.
right before we get in the car to leave? It doesn't matter to you, but it's giving him some control over it. If he has to have it after he eats food, you only give him options that allow them to be yeses. So every syringe you give him has to be a yes syringe. Every option around timing has to be a yes. But
Mhm.
it's like those perceived choices
Mhm.
actually go a long way, and he gets to choose a little bit about it. And as Maddie, we were talking about the whiteboard, let him do it on a whiteboard. You know what? You pick the schedule for the morning. Here are the different things we have to get done. You tell me how you want them to go in the morning, and we have to leave by 8 o'clock. So
Mhm.
he gets more control so that when it goes awry, you can be like, oh my gosh, wait, you wanted to do this. If this is hard, let's go back to this way. So then he's seeing that, like, it's allowing him to have autonomy around it. And if it's hard, it can go back to mom's way, but he doesn't want it to go back to mom's or dad's way.
Mhm. 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 That's great. I will
So
hunt for the
it's a
more
lot of
syringes.
yes, it's a lot of options, and it's a lot of, you have one demand to get that medicine in his mouth. He can have a lot of choices that allow him to feel autonomous about it.
That is perfect. That is perfect. And yeah, it's interesting because like I feel like we spend a lot of time like, or we try to design his morning in a way that reduces a lot of the other demands, but it's the demands. It's interesting to think about how to increase the autonomy, like part of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, in the morning is the trickiest ever because there are demands no matter what you do.
Mhm.
So, with the demands that are inherent, giving it some autonomy, and like for breakfast, for example, don't, like, if this isn't a Cooper thing, but like if it's like a child wants a blue cup, he
Mm.
gets a blue cup for breakfast. Work on the blue cup at snack on a Sunday when you have time for, first of all, it's a wider window of tolerance. Never work on the inflexibility when the window of tolerance is small. Work on it when you're having a great day on a Sunday and, oh my gosh, the blue cup is in the dishwasher. Oh, I know that you're going to be okay with the rainbow one or whatever. So you're only pushing that flexibility at times when you know he has some capacities to be able to take it in.
Mhm. 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 That makes sense. That makes sense.
Other
I
good examples? Yeah.
If other people have things, they should say them. And because I have like tangential things.
Okay. Well, let's see if someone else, and then I'll throw it
Yeah,
back to
and other people should.
you. No other examples of good demands that you guys are seeing?
I can think of one that is relevant to some of our children. Oh, He might have some good ones. Oh, you're
So,
muted.
It's okay if I kind of similar to this around
yes,
toothbrushing.
She knows Cooper.
yes.
Yes. So Cooper and yeah, we used to go to school. Yeah. Toothbrushing. So our daughter's 6 and we already do as much low demands, I would say, as we can. I really appreciate what you've offered so far. A question
I
around,
really appreciate
so
you coming. I like
thank you. Um, but question around toothbrushing. So every night she does a pretty good job with that. We have different kinds of toothpaste, etc. In the morning, I have not pushed on her because it's enough just to get out the door, to get her,
100%.
all of these things. So thoughts on that? Because obviously, as we get older, this is something, and I know around showering and bathing, this is just from me learning about stuff. This is something kids struggle with, especially
Mhm.
as they get older, puberty, all of that around that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I feel I laugh because I have all teenagers and I still yell at them about brushing their teeth, and there are some mornings that I give up. So I may not be the best at those thoughts, but um one thing first thing I always say about toothbrushing is if Lucy goes to an OT, I would start with an OT because there are some kids where it is such a high sensory aversion that we all for huge teeth brushing aversions over it being just a demand avoidance. I always start with an OT because they work at it in a way that's more specialized than we do. If your OT has already worked with her and you know she can do it, then I would all if the is your question more about how to do toothbrushing or more about how you integrate morning toothbrushing in?
More about integrating morning toothbrushing.
Okay,
'Cause
so
Here
yeah,
then
yeah.
oh sorry, go ahead.
or
Um,
online.
So then I would think about window of tolerance. Never start on a school day because that's going to be a very small window of tolerance. So when do you get the best window of tolerance is on a weekend where there are not demands in the morning. So that's when you would start your toothbrushing in the morning adventure so that you can do it in a positive way and do it in a way that's going to be successful for her. And you really set it up in a fun way that is about, okay, we're going to, you start it maybe during the week of like, we are going to start this new thing of brushing teeth in the mornings. And you're going to set it up with some really fun thing that you do afterwards that you brush teeth. And all she's thinking about is, oh, wait, so you do it on a visual or a whiteboard and you talk about first brush teeth, then we're headed off to grandma's, or then we're going to make this huge Lego thing. But now on Saturdays and Sundays, we have to brush teeth. So do you want to brush teeth like this time or this time? Like whatever, give her like, do you want to read a book and then brush teeth? Or do you want to, so you want to set it up in a way that will translate to the at school day. So you don't want to say first Legos, then brush teeth or something like that, because it's going to mess up how it's going to translate. So you want to do something that will translate to school days. But that's where you go with a giving her autonomy of lots of different toothpaste. You could also set up a different toothbrush for the weekend so that that's exciting and that's the morning toothbrush and then that will be the all the time morning toothbrush and you just set it up on days where there's a um low expectations.
Yeah,
Does
that's really
that make
helpful.
sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Have you tried just going on the weekends with it
I have. Um,
and that doesn't
yeah,
work?
well, it's honestly any transition we struggle. It is like, and so it's kind of like how much do I push, and it's recognizing some things. I totally agree on the window tolerance piece. And yeah, I haven't, like today, I was just thinking about this morning, she woke up and I could tell today is probably going to be a harder day for her. And I pick her up this afternoon and
Yes.
thinking about like just what you were saying about Mondays. Um, and just in the mornings transitioning between, okay, she eats her breakfast and we live in an apartment in Boston, so then she goes and plays in her play area. Okay, well, it's I'm going to start getting ready now, and oh, I'll add something that I do seems to help is I'll be like, I wonder how fast you can get changed. Are you going to beat mommy? I don't know. So we kind of make like games that seems to help, but we still transitions still are a struggle. I mean, we're better than we were a year ago, but it's still hard. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know your daughter, so I assume you use visuals for transitions. That honestly makes a huge difference. The amount you're able to preview and the amount you are setting her up for success with visuals. Does that help at all?
We do have like my husband made something that we have on our door that she can see like the things for the before we go to school, like what we need to do. Um, Sometimes that helps, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, I feel like making a game out of it seems to help. I know it's important to use very minimal words like shoes on, or
Yes.
scooter, helmet, like that seems to help. Um, but yeah, the even just yesterday were at a thing and she was enjoying it, and even just wrapping up to finish, even though she was ready to go, just that in itself was hard, just like, okay, now we're gonna be leaving in just a moment, and so anyway.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is you think about the invisible demands going on around her, wrapping up, like it's loud. That's where I always say, or we're big fans at Fuse about a whiteboard because it's not just one more verbal overload. So you're writing it on a whiteboard of first shoes, then jacket. So you're taking out extra verbal demands and you're just pointing at the visual to help her in those moments. And maybe that would be helpful in the bathroom is if you have like, first of all, with going back to toothbrushing, you don't demand of her to put the toothpaste on the toothbrush. You don't demand of her to like wash the tooth, like all the steps. Her entire intention, kind of like I was saying to Maddie with the medicine, is putting the toothbrush in the mouth. And maybe in the morning parts, it's just putting the toothbrush in the mouth. Great, we're done. Now we're going to go do Legos or whatever, so that you're taking all those demands away and setting up a visual of like that, like for toothbrushing, the only visual is toothbrush in the mouth. Once you get to a point where she's doing all the steps, then it would be toothpaste, whatever, put the water on, all the steps, but eliminating all of those if that also makes her overwhelmed.
I would also say
Thank
that
you.
one of our biggest tools here at Fuse is, like you said, those playful transitions. And sometimes, of course, depending on where the kid is or if I can predict how they're going to react to something, I'm not even labeling that we're doing a transition. I'm using like backdoor strategies to get them to move along through the day, right? Because like, I would say all of our goals is to move on through the day rather than them just listen to us. So a great example is kids do not like to come in from the playground. So I might sort of distract them into a game or something that they love to talk about and just like make something up. And you have to think on your feet of like, "Oh, I've been meaning to talk to you about this." And that kind of helps them move through. With the toothbrushing example, I don't know what your daughter likes to play, but if it's like stuffed animals or something, I might like engage her in a game of like, come chase me, and then just go to the bathroom and then just put the toothpaste on the toothbrush and like turn it into something silly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those things might sort of help, but sometimes like we don't even label it here that like we're moving on. It's just we're moving through it, and I'm gonna help you and do that if they're not ready to hear like we're gonna be all done with that or something. It really helps.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Can I ask a quick follow-up about
Yeah.
the adding in autonomy? I feel like with Silas, when we'll try to offer him those choices to give him some control over the demand that he wants to avoid, um, And we'll say, do you want to do it this way or that way? And he'll say neither. Um, and, um, and then, we'll say like, well, those are so it's just like, I'm not sure that how to sort of get him to buy into like, yes, the control is like a positive thing that I want to do rather than just being like, you're just messing with me and making me do
Right. I mean, you can't do it in the heat of the moment. Like if all of a sudden, it's like Lucy with the toothbrushing. If all of a sudden you're like, wait, which toothpaste do you want? Well, they're already, it's
Okay.
outside of their safe, like you think of like demand avoidance as like they're not going to avoid things that's in their window of tolerance or in their safe circle. If the demand is already feeling demand, it's already outside of that window of tolerance or outside of their safe circle. So that's where I was saying to Maddie, like, set up the syringe on a Sunday of like, oh, we're going to get ready for the week. We know you have to do it when whatever the demand is for Silas, you talk about it in an overall thing when they are in that like wide window of tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
In the moment, it kind of goes to what Brianna's saying of like, we don't actually name it in the moment because they're already up here. So what you can do, depending on what the thing you're wanting Silas to do, is go with something he's high. Say the demand is getting in the car, similar to what Brianna just said. Just go with something he is a high interest of, something he wants to talk about, because then you're shifting his mind to something he feels incredibly confident about, and you're talking about this thing, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you're putting your shoes on. You just kind of put his shoes in front of him. You start putting his shoes on while you're like, wait, tell me more. What was that about that train, locomotion, whatever? And then you're like, wait, I'm like, let's finish this in the car. I want to hear about this. So now he's thinking about, oh my gosh, she wants to hear about that. And then you're going to talk about it in the car, and you're moving as you're talking to him. So it feels less demand and more you're aligned, and you're regulating him with that high interest conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the choices comes because if you do it in the moment for him, it's going to feel like a forced choice that you've actually ironically demanded of him. So you want to give him a more space in that way, if that makes sense. Other examples? Or Maddie, you said you had another one?
I'm having mainstream classroom anxiety and was just thinking about like the
You still have time. You're still a few. Because you can't, I will say before you even say your example, because our teachers have this juxtaposition a lot around, well, if they're going down the hallway on a scooter board, how is that ever going to get them ready for a mainstream classroom? But our goal is to help them understand themselves and help them build confidence in themselves. If we just make them walk down the hallway, we're creating more masking and we're creating compliance. We're not creating an understanding of who they are. So here is what I will say is, there are kids that walking with 20 kids in the hallway is on the impossible level because they're not ready for it. What we are doing is meeting a child where they are and building that confidence so that they move up ever so slightly as the year goes on, and as they build regulation, build understanding, understand how to divide out, and more comfortable dividing out the auditory and the visual, and they build that tolerance. Like I said, if you look at pictures, like if we just did a video of, which we say we're going to do every year, of a group transitioning from the beginning of the year to even right now, is metamorphosis. It is incredibly different and incredibly more regulated. Is it perfect? No, but that's because we're still in the growth process. Is any of our kids going to be at a level where they could walk in a 20 kid line with silent voice and, whatever, their hands to their side. I'm not sure, but if we demand of that, that whole day is being lost in that one demand. So we have to prioritize. We are going for a whole day of all the things we're working on over. We know that a public school has high demands in lots of different places.
That makes
So
sense.
now you can ask your question just with that caveat.
Well, was my like thinking about like them walking in a single file line and quietly down the hallway past a million things. So that is very helpful in that front.
Because it may be something in the IEP that we say small group transitions is going to be more successful to start, and we call it like front loading support, because that is going to be something that would be that's like my example of the child who had a first OT session. Walking in a line with 20 kids is going to be so anxiety provoking that it's going to negate their window of tolerance altogether. So they're not open and accessible for other things.
Totally. And like, I'm just thinking about like all the disasters that can happen, like
1,000.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it becomes they need space and they're not great at advocating for space. So then they become physically frustrated. They are frustrated and they become physical, but it's not because it's a behavior. It's because there's 20 invisible demands about that line.
Yes.
So we're just not there yet. And we'd rather build internal success and confidence than create a military school, because that's what it would be to get in a line.
Well, it's also, yeah, like I think about like the knowing themselves and like I can just see like giving them a chewy, like, having them like know they have something like a fidget in their hand or something that they know is going to make it easier for
Absolutely.
them.
Yes.
That will make a big difference.
Yes. I think that, I mean, but even a fidget or a chewy in a line of 20, that's there. We have to get to that place as well.
Yeah.
But it's part of the process. They will figure that piece out.
But yeah, I guess it's like how long do you have to like walk in line? Well, then you have to walk by yourself somewhere. But yeah, okay. The question I had, or the tangent I had, was that Maggie mentioned like this thing that some of the kids do when they get to school is they stand outside of the classroom and like look in the window and talk about like, oh, I don't know, it's like they make a plan about it. I just wondering like the mechanics of like how that, I guess that what increases connection,
like why they do that or how we do it.
A little bit of both, like almost like how that works in the framework of like lowering demand so that they can so that they can then enter and like be successful engaging with their peers. And I'm obviously thinking about how that would translate in like a mainstream environment.
So it is, again, it goes to the window of tolerance. They've just gotten out of the car. There's, a million demands at the cubby. It might be chaotic in the cubby. So we've just asked them to get out of the car, say goodbye to mom or dad, come into the school. And it's always unexpected who's going to be in the cubby area, how busy it's going to be in the cubby area, hooking the backpack on, all the things. So that's a lot of demand. So what have we done? If they were having a great ride in, all we've done is shrunk back down that window of tolerance. So sometimes walking into a classroom where there's already 5 kids playing and the scan, a lot of our kids like visual scanning is a lot. So they're trying to process it all. So there's a couple of different intentions around it. One is giving them space to breathe. One is letting them analyze and assess what's happening in the classroom from an executive functioning standpoint. Because what happens on like a playground that so many parents say is like, we go to the playground and then my child just bombs into the sandbox and they didn't notice that kids were making a tower or whatever. So if you watch and you just take a mindful moment to watch and look at what's happening, it allows your brain to integrate the information rather than, oh my gosh, this is so busy. I'm going to go in and crash this because that's what I know I can get a reaction. I know I'm good at that. And it's a negative reaction, but it's what we always default to what we know we're really good at. And playing for lots of our kids is not what we're really good at. It's something we're working on. So if I go in and yell, then I know I'm going to get my teacher's attention, and I'm really good at that. So what we do at the door is just stand with a child. And how you do it, like, let's say, maybe let's hypothetically say going into jujitsu or going into like a room at the science museum, crazy busy. And so what happens if you just release your child is they go in and they bomb into the water table and take something that's not theirs or whatever. But if you stand there with them, let's say it's the science museum and it's like the magnet wall or whatever, just be like, oh my gosh, let's watch. Wait, I notice this. Oh my gosh, look at that pattern they're making, because they're not watching. They get so overwhelmed so quick. They're not watching these things that they could enter very, very well. And so then I'm like, wait a minute, with those magnet pegs, wait, they're making a red blue pattern. Oh, I could go give them a blue. I'm going to go give them a blue. And then maybe I'll do red next. So you're giving them a way to join that is you're letting them join the dance without disrupting the dance. So if we think of like anything, if you're at a bar or something, you don't just bomb onto a table. You look around, you see who you know. You're like, oh, I can talk to this person because I have something to say to this person. So you join that conversation. For our kids, we have to create that join in. And the last thing we want to do is like the old ABA way of like, go say hi and tell them your name, because that's not going to work. It's not natural and it doesn't work. And they don't know what to do after that. So if we sit with them and we say, like going into the classroom, oh, Cooper, I notice, what are they doing? They're travel or whatever. Like, oh my gosh, I notice that they're making an airplane with the magnet tiles. And I know these friends are in the Century Bend playing with the kinetic sands in the airplanes. And be like, oh, I know you love kinetic sand. And then be like, I bet if you go over there, you could hide some of the airplanes for them to find them or something. So like giving him a way to join that is productive, because all our friends need is that confidence. But when your window of tolerance is low, you are not thinking of those ideas on your own. So what we do is become the metacognition of how can giving them a leverage to join that is successful, and seeing the room, seeing the big picture, rather than just seeing the one train that someone has that they want of, oh, I know Liam has that train, but wait, I see the blue one open and I know he loves blue trains. Maybe you could ask for a swap. And then that gets them to join more successfully. And walking into a classroom is a whole new set of demands. So we almost have to like recalibrate their brain before. Some kids join naturally, but some kids need a lot of time to process and switch cognitive sets to another place. So that's why we stand at the door. Like same thing when Brooke or any of our OT specialists come, they do not just open the door and release the child into the room. They sit with them and just be like, oh, even as they're walking, they'll figure out what the schedule is. And they'll be like, oh, I know they're at circle time right now. I wonder if you're going to have a blue chair or a yellow chair, because you know that's going to be just a huge trigger if the one chair they want is not there. So they give them their plan A, plan B all the time. So they're thinking plan A, plan B. Same thing with like going into jujitsu. Oh, I know it's going to be warm up time. I wonder if they're going to be doing whatever, stretches or running. I don't know what's going to be first this time. What do you think? Oh, it was this last time. So giving them that, I'm going to stretch your brain a little bit before we walk in so nothing is unexpected.
Like prime you to
Prime you. Because we do that naturally as adults. Like you go to a restaurant and you kind of already know what you want to eat, but if they don't have that, like you always have a backup. But none of us go into a situation completely cold, or we don't like it that much. So like we prime ourselves. Our kids just don't have the executive functioning to prep the like mantra of, oh no, so-and-so is not going to be here. Oh yes, I can talk to this person, like at a dinner. Oh no, this person's not here. Oh, yes, I know I can talk about this with this person. You like set yourself up for something that you know you can be successful with. We have to volley that to our kids. Oh, no, I know I'm going to the science. Oh, no, we're at the science museum and this looks busy. We know last time this was really busy, but we know we love this. So let's think about, we could go try this first, but we know it might be busy. So then it's not a demand. It's a, oh, no, oh, yes, let's go here first and then we'll come back. Like
Nice.
plan A's, plan B's work very well. And it's something our kids really struggle with because their plan A seems to be it's that or end of the world. So if we give them plan B's, then they're thinking, oh, wait, there is another alternative that I may be able to do.
And even if that alternative is not available, at least they're thinking like they've like
Yeah.
started thinking that way. Like,
Yeah. And even if you're walking to plan B, you're going for plan C. Like, oh, I hope it's really busy here. I don't know if this is going to be available, but we also know we like this. Or like you're always giving them an out of how it's not going to be the end of the world. Because then it becomes a demand that then we can't get in front of when we're not giving them some kind of idea of what else they can do.
And like stay in their window, like that, like that's like within their window of
Yes, because then right, if we're helping regulate that window, especially when you're out at other things, their window is going to be small, but we're helping them like you just stretch it a little bit, a little bit, so it doesn't tip over the edge.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah. Other ideas that you guys want to throw around? I'll send you there's a really good little short video on window of tolerance that I think it's also, here's the really fun fact is we have to modulate our windows of tolerance as well. And sometimes when our window of tolerance is really small, it is not a great time to try to push your child. So that's when you take a break. Like we always say to teachers, you know your window of tolerance. And if you are about to pop over the top, ask for a break because there is nothing that's going to go well. And what you're going to do if you are stretched is just place demands because you can't be flexible if you have no window, if your window of tolerance is small. So that what happens is when we are taxed, what we do is place demands because that's the easiest and we just want kids to comply with it, but that's the hardest for the kids. So now we're just butting heads with our kids. So when you're feeling stretched, it's almost and you can say it to your kids of, oh, you know what, I need a minute and then we're going to come back and talk about getting dressed, and give yourself that moment to be like, okay, how can I reset this in a way that might be successful rather than me just trying to like rip the shirt over his head, because it's never really going to work that way. So that is important for us to think about. We are always thinking about our kids' window of tolerance, but we're always thinking about what we need and what helps us feel not stretched and what is at our edge of competence without going over.
Amen.
And it's not that easy, right? It is not that easy, but you can always just take an internal break. If you're like driving, just internally shut it down and just like almost like decompress yourself to be able to re-engage with your kid. Other thoughts or ideas?
I think that like Silas's biggest invisible demand is just the existence of his brother. And
well, that's not something we can get rid of.
Well, Silas has some ideas for that, but
I'm sure he does.
Granted that that's not going to happen.
No.
I don't know how to make that. I mean, is that just sort of going to happen over
so
time?
Actually, what you want to think about is what about his brother is really taxing for him? Is it, and I know what you're going to say is he messes up Silas's existence. He messes up the unpredictability, all of those things. But if you really think about what about Silas's profile is incredibly, I mean, sorry, what about Silas's profile makes Caleb really hard? Is it that he talks a lot? Is it that he's so impulsive and grabbing without being predictable to Silas? Like, what about him is hard? Because then we can help Silas understand where Caleb is and Caleb use better messages.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I feel like a lot of it is just that it makes me less available to Silas.
Okay. So then what you want to do is make sure you set up time in the day to have special Silas time. That's like step one, is make sure every day has special mommy and Silas time where Caleb is not in the picture,
Mhm.
so that he knows he's going to get that mommy fill of time. And when Silas is doing something to Caleb, you're never focusing on Silas. You're focusing on Caleb so that Silas doesn't think his action to Caleb is going to get him attention.
Right.
And I think that's like a big, very normal misstep is, let's say, hypothetically, if he hits Caleb, what you want to do is stop Silas. But what all Silas sees in that is, I just got all of mom's attention.
Yeah.
And what you want to do is be like, oh my gosh, Caleb, you know what? Silas isn't ready to play with us right now. Let's go play over here. His body isn't being safe, whatever, and go to Caleb. And if Silas comes back, oh, Silas, you look like you're ready to play with us. Come join us.
Mm. I feel like he in those moments when I try to do that, he'll kind of like chase us and try to like if I'm like Caleb and I are gonna go play in the other room, he will
Yeah.
just like follow, scratching and hitting and yelling at me. And so I feel like I always have to leave Caleb, who I want to be paying attention to, because he just got hurt out of the blue
Right.
for him.
But then what did Silas do? He got your attention.
I know,
Like,
but it's like when he's physically like following, I don't know how to get Caleb's space from him without moving silent. I mean, yeah.
right. So then, and we can do this. I emailed you this morning. We need to come up with a place that Silas can be that feels safe if he needs space.
Okay.
He has to have a space that he can be when he needs space that doesn't require you.
Okay.
Because he is going to up that ante until he gets you. And it sounds like he is. And so it's only going to possibly get worse.
Yeah. And he'll like up it until he gets me outside of my window of tolerance. Like
Of
I feel like
course. I
he
mean,
will just
that's
keep doing things until like I yell, you know?
yeah,
Um,
because right. And I think there's this piece of all of our kids that like he feels shame that he did something to Caleb. So now he goes for this like next level reaction. So it's like he becomes his own worst enemy at those moments.
yeah.
So if we can find a space that he can be, that he can just have a chewy, like squish, like something that's all safe things that don't include you in it, he's learning that he can't up the ante for you, because you yelling, while it's negative, it's giving him a feed that he's not getting but from the Caleb piece.
Hmm. Okay.
And I'm sure, I mean, it's very easy to get you out of your window of tolerance when he's just hurt Caleb. So he doesn't have far to go with it. So
Right.
yes. So then he's just going to be the best at that.
Yes.